Before billion-dollar franchises and cinematic universes, before CGI and multiverse madness, there were pioneers, actors who donned capes, masks, and moral conviction in a world that hadn't yet defined the term superhero. These were the icons of old Hollywood who brought larger-than-life characters to screens big and small, laying the very foundation for today's heroic legends. Yet somehow, history forgot them. Overshadowed by modern blockbusters, their legacy faded into celluloid dust. But not anymore. In this video, we're bringing them back into spotlight, 12 forgotten heroes who walked so today's superheroes could fly. Buster Crabbe, the original space avenger. Long before superheroes soared across digital skies and space operas became billion-dollar franchises, Buster Crabbe carved his place into history as cinema's first great intergalactic hero. In an era when the world was reeling from economic despair and teetering on the edge of global conflict, audiences turned to the silver screen for escape. What they found was a broad-shouldered Olympian who brought cosmic fantasy to life with a fearless glint in his eye and a square jaw sculpted for the matinee poster. Crabbe was no ordinary actor plucked from obscurity. A gold medalist swimmer from the 1932 Olympics, he radiated physical confidence that was impossible to fake. Hollywood quickly saw in him something more than athleticism. He had presence. When he stepped into the roles of Flash Gordon in 1936 and Buck Rogers in 1939, he wasn't playing a hero. He became one. Long before audiences had ever heard of lightsabers, warp drives, or space stones, Crabbe was strapping into rocket ships, battling tyrants on distant planets, and saving the universe with nothing more than determination and a clean-cut charm. What makes Crabbe's legacy so remarkable is that he didn't just portray one iconic sci-fi character, he defined two of them. As Flash Gordon, he battled Ming the Merciless and introduced generations to serialized science fiction. As Buck Rogers, he ushered in a vision of the future that helped shape the genre itself. These stories, though produced on modest budgets and limited by primitive effects, captured imaginations in a way few modern films can. They weren't just entertainment, they were promises of what could be. Yet today, Buster Crabbe's name is rarely mentioned alongside the Cape Titans of modern cinema. But every time a hero steps into a spaceship or fights for something bigger than themselves, a shadow of Crabbe's legacy flies just ahead of them, blazing the trail he charted nearly a century ago. Adam West, the man behind the mask of laughter. Before Batman was brooding, armored, and haunted by shadows, he was brilliant, bold, and completely unforgettable, thanks to Adam West. In the 1960s, when television was still finding its identity and comic book adaptations were considered little more than children's fare, West stepped into the cape and cowl with a combination of sincerity, self-awareness, and magnetic charm that would leave an indelible mark on pop culture. His Batman didn't just fight crime, he turned it into theater, dancing between satire and sincerity with a skill few actors could master. Adam West was no mere caricature of a superhero. Beneath the bright colors, the exaggerated biff and pow effects, and the infamous bat dance, there was a man who understood the tightrope he was walking. He gave audiences a Batman who could be admired and chuckled at in equal measure, a guardian of Gotham with a Boy Scout's moral compass and a Shakespearean sense of drama. Children saw a genuine hero. Adults saw clever humor wrapped in spandex. Everyone saw a character who felt completely, uniquely alive. But West's greatest gift was his ability to believe in the absurdity without mocking it. He never treated the role with disdain, even when the industry moved on from his brand of campy heroism. As darker versions of the character emerged in the decades that followed, West's portrayal was quietly dismissed, as if his contribution to the Batman legacy had aged into irrelevance. In truth, his version of the Dark Knight was the one that proved superheroes could succeed beyond comic pages, that they could headline a TV show, a movie, and a cultural moment. Though Adam West eventually became a symbol of nostalgia, the warmth and wit he brought to Batman laid the foundation for the global icon the character would become. Every bat signal lit in the sky owes a flicker to the man who wore the mask not to intimidate, but to inspire, with a wink, a gadget, and unwavering justice. George Reeves, the Superman who walked among us. When George Reeves first appeared on television screens as Superman in the early 1950s, the world was still adjusting to the aftermath of war and the weight of a rapidly changing society. There was a hunger for hope, a need for something or someone to believe in. Into that void stepped Reeves, clad in a modest fabric suit, hands on hips, a confident smile on his face. He didn't need special effects or a cinematic universe to command attention. All he needed was presence. And George Reeves had it in abundance. Reeves wasn't the first actor to play Superman, but he was the first to make him feel real. His performance in Adventures of Superman wasn't about spectacle, it was about values. He brought warmth, patience, and wisdom to the role, embodying a version of the character that seemed less like a god from another planet and more like a trusted neighbor who happened to be able to fly. Children idolized him, not just because he could stop speeding trains, but because he treated everyone, from the mayor to the milkman, with the same quiet dignity. What made Reeves unique wasn't his strength, but his restraint. He never shouted to assert power, never postured to prove dominance. He believed in Superman's ideals, truth, fairness, and compassion, and played him not as a distant symbol, but as a mentor, someone viewers felt they knew. His Clark Kent, too, wasn't the bumbling comic relief that later interpretations would lean into. He was confident, capable, and human, a reflection of a hero who chose humility over fame. Though time would see the cape passed on to new faces and more elaborate interpretations, Reeves's Superman remains one of the purest. In a world that often confuses power with greatness, George Reeves reminded us that true heroism lies in integrity, consistency, and quiet strength. He wasn't just Superman on television. For a generation, he was Superman in life. Burgess Meredith, the gentleman villain who stole the spotlight. In a world of caped crusaders and masked vigilantes, few actors ever managed to steal the scene from the hero. Burgess Meredith was one of the rare few who didn't just steal it, he redefined it. As the umbrella-wielding, monocle-wearing, smoke-spewing Penguin in the 1960s Batman television series, Meredith transformed what could have been a one-note comic book villain into a performance layered with wit, menace, and an unmistakable theatrical flair. He was never just the bad guy. He was a force of personality. Meredith was already a respected actor of the stage and screen before Gotham ever called. With a career stretching back to the 1930s, he had a voice that could boom or whisper, and a presence that felt commanding even when he played characters half the size of a hero. His Penguin wasn't a brawler or a brute. He was something more dangerous, clever, unpredictable, and dangerously amused by his own wickedness. Every squawk, every sneer, every cunning line was delivered with an actor's precision and a showman's joy. Unlike other villains who faded into the background of the Batman mythos, Meredith's Penguin became iconic, not in spite of the show's camp, but because he fully embraced it. He understood that comic book characters, when played with commitment, could be timeless. His Penguin was flamboyant without being ridiculous, threatening without needing to raise a hand, and oddly charming in a way that kept audiences leaning just a little closer to the screen. Though future interpretations of the Penguin would grow darker and more grotesque, none would ever capture the unique magnetism Meredith brought to the role. He reminded us that villains could be complex, charismatic, even delightful, and that sometimes the most memorable characters in a hero's story are the ones who stand in their way, grinning, plotting, and enjoying every minute of the game. Kirk Alyn, the first man to leap over tall buildings. Before the world believed a man could fly, Kirk Alyn convinced them he already had. In 1948, long before visual effects could simulate a leap across the skyline or a flight above Metropolis, Alyn became the very first actor to portray Superman in live action. It was a performance born not from digital spectacle, but from physicality, stage presence, and a deep respect for the source material. In the beginning, there was Kirk Alyn, and he gave Superman a body, a voice, and a soul. Alyn was a dancer and Broadway performer before donning the red and blue suit, and it showed. His movements were graceful, purposeful, and larger than life. What he lacked in cinematic resources, he made up for with conviction. The flying sequences may have relied on animation, but everything else, the strength, the poise, the moral clarity, was Alyn. He didn't just play Superman, he made the idea of Superman real for audiences seeing him outside of comic pages for the first time. As Clark Kent, Alyn brought a distinct charm and quiet confidence. He wasn't a caricature of awkwardness, but a clever disguise for a man with limitless power. He balanced the dual identity with subtlety, making it clear that beneath the suit and spectacles lived someone noble, someone worth believing in. His performance resonated so deeply that he was invited back for a second serial, Atom Man vs. Superman, solidifying his place as a pioneer in superhero cinema. And yet, like many trailblazers, Kirk Alyn was gradually overshadowed by the very myth he helped create. As Superman grew more polished and high-budget, the humble, earnest beginnings faded into the background. But the truth remains, without Kirk Alyn, there might never have been a blueprint for what a live-action superhero could look like. He stood tall, cape billowing at the dawn of an era, the first to wear the emblem, the first to take flight, if only in the hearts of those who saw him do it. Frank Gorshin, the man who laughed in riddles. In a universe of cowls, capes, and crusaders, chaos often comes in calculated patterns. And no one delivered chaos with more rhythm, intensity, and manic precision than Frank Gorshin, the man who redefined villainy on television as the Riddler in the 1960s Batman series. He didn't just play a criminal mastermind, he became a one-man storm of laughter, intellect, and unstoppable energy. Long before villains were given sympathetic backstories or tragic motivations, Gorshin's Riddler was a force of pure obsession. Every word, every movement, every riddle was infused with a kinetic madness that made him impossible to look away from. Gorshin's background as an impressionist and nightclub performer gave him a toolkit most actors lacked. He knew how to control an audience, how to shift tone on a dime, how to turn something simple into something unforgettable. And he used every bit of that to craft a villain who danced on the edge of genius and insanity. What set Gorshin apart was his commitment. Where others might have leaned into parody, he gave the Riddler real weight, unpredictable, dangerous, and always a step ahead. His cackling laughter wasn't a gimmick, it was a challenge. A dare to both Batman and the audience to keep up. In many ways, he was the first true comic book villain to feel alive on screen, layered, theatrical, and unhinged in a way that still echoes through modern interpretations. Though the Riddler has since been reimagined many times, from cryptic sadist to deranged hacker, none have captured the raw voltage of Frank Gorshin. His performance wasn't just memorable, it was definitive. In a world obsessed with answers, Gorshin reminded us of the power of the question. And sometimes the most dangerous mind in the room is the one smiling widest, asking, "Can you solve me?" Yvonne De Carlo, the matriarch of the macabre. In an era when Hollywood celebrated golden ingenues and glamorous starlets, Yvonne De Carlo carved out a place all her own, not with fragility, but with strength, mystery, and a voice that could command silence. Best known for her iconic role as Lily Munster in the 1960s Gothic comedy The Munsters, De Carlo brought depth and dignity to a character that could have easily been reduced to a visual gag. Instead, she became the heart of a haunted household, the undead matriarch with a soul. De Carlo was no stranger to drama long before she stepped onto the set of 1313, Mockingbird Lane. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, she starred in sweeping Technicolor adventures, biblical epics, and noir thrillers. She was a true leading lady, both fierce and graceful, with a presence that could outshine the brightest lights of the studio era. But when she embraced the role of Lily Munster, she didn't just take a risk, she helped redefine what a female lead in genre television could be. While Munsters leaned heavily into camp and parody, De Carlo played Lily with a remarkable steadiness. She was the calm center of chaos, the moral compass in a family of monsters, always poised, always composed, whether scolding Grandpa for meddling with potions or supporting her misunderstood son, Eddie. Beneath the ghoulish makeup and Victorian gowns, there was real humanity. Lily wasn't just a supernatural figure. She was a mother, a wife, and a woman of principle. In a time when comic-inspired stories rarely gave space to complex female roles, Yvonne De Carlo delivered one with elegance and command. Her Lily Munster may have come from the shadows, but she stood firmly in the light. And in doing so, she proved that even in the world of monsters, heroes come in unexpected forms, sometimes dressed in cobwebs, and always ahead of their time. Lyle Talbot, the man who served both sides of justice. In the sprawling history of superhero storytelling, few actors can say they stood on both sides of the moral divide. Lyle Talbot did exactly that, portraying not one, but two iconic comic book figures, the stalwart Commissioner Gordon and the diabolical Lex Luthor. At a time when such characters were still in their formative stages on screen, Talbot brought them both to life with a conviction that grounded even the most outlandish of serial adventures. By the time he joined the world of cape heroes and criminal masterminds, Talbot was already a seasoned actor with a career stretching back to the earliest days of talking pictures. He was part of the original Warner Brothers stock company in the 1930s, appearing alongside stars like Bette Davis and Carole Lombard. Talbot had the kind of face that suited both charm and menace, a quality that would serve him well when the world of comic books began crossing over into cinema. In Batman and Robin, 1949, Talbot became the first live-action Commissioner Gordon, a character now central to the Batman mythos. He portrayed Gordon not as a bureaucrat, but as a man of firm resolve, a civilian anchor in a world of masks and vigilantes. Just a year later, he crossed the moral chasm to play Lex Luthor in Atom Man vs. Superman, 1950, transforming into the cold, calculated mind that would haunt the Man of Steel for generations. Talbot's performances may not have had the spectacle of modern adaptations, but they carried something just as important: the weight of belief. He took roles others might have dismissed and gave them substance. In doing so, he helped shape the duality at the heart of every superhero tale, that the battle between good and evil is never just visual, but ideological. And for one remarkable actor, it was a battle he fought brilliantly from both sides. Noelle Neal, the First Lady of Metropolis. Long before the modern wave of strong, complex female leads in superhero cinema, there was Noelle Neal, the original Lois Lane brought to life with intelligence, wit, and quiet defiance. At a time when women in film were often relegated to helpless damsels or love interests waiting in the wings, Neal crafted a character who wasn't content to sit on the sidelines. Her Lois didn't just report the news. She chased it, questioned it, and risked everything to uncover the truth. Neal first portrayed Lois Lane in the 1948 Superman serial opposite Kirk Allen, and later took over the same role in the Adventures of Superman television series alongside George Reeves. She wasn't just reciting lines. She was helping shape the identity of a now legendary character. Her Lois was curious, independent, and fiercely driven, often throwing herself into danger not to be saved, but because she believed in the story. She stood toe-to-toe with Superman, not just as a love interest, but as an equal in determination and courage. What made Neal's performance so enduring wasn't grandstanding or theatrics, but subtlety. She conveyed strength through stillness, confidence through presence. Even when surrounded by superpowered feats and larger-than-life villains, she remained grounded, a human voice of integrity in a world of impossible powers. Audiences saw a woman who could keep pace with Superman not just in action, but in ideals. Though later versions of Lois Lane would evolve with the times, Noelle Neal's portrayal remains foundational. She brought grace to a genre that often underestimated women and gave generations of viewers a heroine rooted not in powers, but in purpose. She was the voice of reason in a city of chaos, the soul of a daily planet, and for many, the first proof that a hero doesn't need to fly to change the world. Cesar Romero, the smile that haunted Gotham. Long before clowns became symbols of chaos or psychological torment, there was one who reigned with flamboyance, menace, and an unshakable grin. Cesar Romero, the first live-action Joker, didn't just wear the face of Gotham's most infamous villain, he defined it for an entire generation. His portrayal in the 1960s Batman television series wasn't bound by darkness or driven by backstory. It was theatrical, wild, and unapologetically surreal. And somehow it worked. Romero brought a level of sophistication to the Joker that no one expected. With his tall frame, elegant features, and debonair charm, he was already a fixture in Hollywood, known for romantic leads and suave supporting roles throughout the 1930s and 40s. But when he stepped into the green wig and purple suit, he transformed completely. This Joker didn't lurk in shadows. He performed. He hijacked airwaves, danced across rooftops, and turned every scheme into a show. It wasn't about fear, it was about spectacle. Perhaps the most telling detail of Romero's time as the Joker is one that became iconic in hindsight. He refused to shave his mustache for the role, and the white face, paint was simply brushed over it. What might seem like a minor quirk today became symbolic of everything his Joker represented, flamboyantly unbothered, unmistakably committed, and entirely in control of the narrative. He didn't need to transform to become the Joker. He already was commanding, magnetic, and just unpredictable enough to unsettle anyone who dared underestimate him. While future versions of the Joker would grow darker, more psychological, and undeniably more violent, Romero's legacy remains vital. He was the first to prove that villains could be as captivating as the heroes, that a smile could be more dangerous than a snarl, and that even chaos, when dressed in a tuxedo and laughing maniacally, could be absolutely unforgettable. Jack Larson, the boy next door of Metropolis. Before sidekicks became wisecracking comic relief or brooding protégés, there was Jack Larson, the original Jimmy Olsen, brought to life with a youthful sincerity that made him more than just a supporting character. In Adventures of Superman during the 1950s, Larson didn't just play a photographer chasing stories. He embodied the everyday citizen in a world of impossible heroes, reminding audiences that courage wasn't limited to those in capes. With his wide-eyed optimism and relentless curiosity, Larson's Jimmy was the heart of the Daily Planet. Impulsive, loyal, and often in over his head, but never lacking the will to do what was right. He wasn't fearless in the traditional sense. He was often afraid, sometimes nervous, occasionally reckless. But he still stepped forward. That's what made him relatable. In a world filled with alien strength and superhuman feats, Jimmy Olsen was human, and Larson made sure that meant something. Off-screen, Jack Larson was a poet and playwright, a thoughtful artist who brought real nuance to a role that could have easily been dismissed as background noise. He played Jimmy not as a bumbling fool, but as a young man trying to find his place, sometimes stumbling, often learning, always pressing forward. That earnestness resonated with audiences, especially the younger viewers who saw a little of themselves in the kid holding the camera, trying to keep up with gods. Though time would eventually move on from that era of Superman storytelling, Jack Larson never disappeared from the mythos. He would return in later years for cameo roles and tributes, always welcomed back with respect and admiration. Because no matter how advanced the effects or how powerful the heroes, the soul of the story often rests with those standing beside them. The believers, the dreamers, the friends. And Jack Larson was the first of them, holding the lens through which a generation saw what heroism could truly be. Vincent Price, the aristocrat of eccentric evil. Few actors in Hollywood history have worn villainy as elegantly as Vincent Price. With a voice like velvet draped in menace, and a presence that could chill or charm with equal ease, he was already an icon of Gothic cinema by the time he entered Gotham's Rogues Gallery. But in 1966, when he took on the role of Egghead in the Batman television series, Price did something extraordinary. He blended high camp with high art, turning a comic book gimmick into a character only he could elevate. Egghead on paper was absurd. Bald pale, obsessed with egg puns and schemes that were as ridiculous as they were harmless. Yet in Price's hands, he became something else entirely, a villain played with such theatrical grandeur, intelligence, and self-satisfaction that it was impossible not to admire him. He delivered every pun as if it were Shakespeare, every scheme with the confidence of a master conductor. Audiences may have laughed at Egghead, but they watched him, closely, eagerly, because Vincent Price made sure of it. What's most striking about Price's contribution to the superhero world is that he never once treated it as beneath him. Despite his long resume of acclaimed horror and dramatic work, he embraced the world of Batman with a kind of playful respect that gave his performance real integrity. He didn't look down on the genre, he looked right into it and winked. In doing so, he became one of the show's most memorable guest stars, adding a touch of sophistication to the chaos of Gotham. Vincent Price didn't need powers or elaborate costumes to command attention. His power was in the voice, the posture, the glint of intelligence behind every smile. He proved that villainy could be intelligent, magnetic, and, when delivered by a master, unforgettable. In a city full of colorful criminals, Egghead may have been the strangest, but thanks to Price, he was also one of the finest. These 12 faces may no longer fill today's blockbuster posters, but their shadows stretch long across the superhero stories we celebrate now. Before the era of cinematic universes and billion-dollar box office records, they were the ones who stepped into the unknown, often without recognition, budget, or precedent, and gave life to characters the world would one day revere. They worked with sincerity, passion, and a belief in something greater than themselves. And for that, they deserve to be remembered. Old Hollywood didn't have green screens or global fan events, but it had heart. It had pioneers. And it had performers like these who helped shape what the superhero genre would become, not with special effects, but with performance, presence, and conviction. Their legacies are not forgotten here. Not today. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Who surprised you on this list? Do you have a favorite performance or a forgotten hero we didn't include? Drop a comment below. We read every single one and reply whenever we can. Let's keep these legends alive through conversation and community. If you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a tribute like this. There are more stories waiting in the wings and more heroes who deserve their moment in the light. Thank you for watching. And to the legends of yesterday, we remember you.